Good evening, everybody. Welcome and thank you for attending our Fireside Chat, Navigating the Runway, Insights from Airport Operation Leaders, and this is presented by the Worldwide College of Business. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to cover a couple minor logistical items. So if you are online and you have a question for our panelists, please put it in the chat and I will ask them. And if you are in person, just raise your hand and Darcy will come over to you and ask your question. Really, this is for you, so please ask as many questions as you would like. Now I would like to introduce each of our panelists. I'm going to start with Steve. He's the Chief of Operations in Houston Airport Systems and also an alumnus of ours. And he also has cool socks. You want to show your socks?
Seem appropriate today, I guess.
Yeah. He's the best dressed person up here for sure with his airport socks. Next we have Adam Floyd from Nashville, and he is the VP of Ops at Nashville. Lisa Gahm is the VP of Operations at Dallas Fort Worth International Airport, and Marquez Griffin is joining us. He is the Senior Vice President of Operations at MCO. So I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank all of our audience members, and I want to thank all the attendees that are online. So I just want to start with each of you, and we'll start with Marquez. And I just want to talk just briefly about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Good question. Interesting journey. So started aviation similar to a lot of folks here, started in college. From the age of 9, I always knew I wanted to be in aviation. So everything I did since age 9 was geared towards aviation. I graduated from college and expected that I would have an easy path into aviation. I thought I was going to have a high-paying job. I was going to make a ton of money within 5 years. Originally from the islands, I was going to move back to the islands and live a happy life, fat, dumb, and happy. That didn't happen. So the challenge was finding my path after college. Me and my roommate at the time, we ended up applying to every single airline at Orlando International looking for employment. Eventually got hired by one of the airlines. Did that for the first 8 years before I realized where the good life is with the airport. So after 8 years, transferred over to the airport at Orlando International. And I've been there since, been there almost 16 years now. So path started as a supervisor in operation, bounced around, actually went to an airfield specialist, and then kind of worked my way up through there. So it was just an interesting flow trying to figure out how to get to where I am.
Great. Thank you, Marquez. Lisa, same question.
Sounds good. For me, aviation started probably 15, 16. I got a glider ride for my birthday over Sonoma, the vineyards, and it was beautiful and it was quiet. And I said, I'm going to be a pilot. Kind of thought I was going to head that way. I went pro pilot. I started getting my license. So when I went to college, I already had a private pilot's license and worked through there for 2 years of school to work on flying and getting education. And then I switched to Metropolitan State College in Denver, where I switched over to aerospace science, aviation management. And that was basically funding, right? Like when you're building your time, it's expensive and it just wasn't in the cards for me to keep flying. And sometimes under the hood, I was like, this seems not as fun as it was when you're just flying around for fun. So I went aviation management. I also worked for 3 airlines, 2 of which went under while I worked for them. And I decided I would like to have a paycheck instead of free flights. And so I ended up flipping out my resume, same kind of thing, but I looked all over the US and I ended up in Morristown, New Jersey. It's my first job in like true aviation management, I guess I'll say. And I worked there a year. And then I'm from Denver, Colorado, and they said they were going to build Denver International Airport many years ago. And I said, I'm going back. So I got a job at Stapleton International. I worked in the construction side of building Den. And I pretty much worked in every department in Denver. And after 2 months shy of 30 years, I got recruited to go to DFW. So I'm down in Texas now. And been there 3.5 years, loving it. Tried to get away from snow, and it just followed me down there. But I worked in many departments. I got an environmental master's degree, so I worked in environmental, security, airfield ops. One kind of diversion, I guess I'll call it, is I went to the innovation department, and that really ended up being a game changer for my career. And I'm sure that'll come up in another question down the road.
Thank you, Lisa. Adam?
Well, I'm kind of the odd duck in the room, the one that doesn't belong here. At 17, I joined the Coast Guard, did 21 years in the Coast Guard, zero aviation experience at all. Retired in the Coast Guard in 2019. My wife and I were trying to decide where we wanted to live, and Nashville was the place we wanted to go. And the airport was hiring. So I got hired on as emergency management director. Did that for about 2 years and absolutely loved the airport environment. Dove head first, learned as much as I could. My passion was driven towards operations immediately. So fortunately, the operations AVP position opened up, applied thinking I had zero chance at all, got the interview and got the job. So did the AVP of the operations over airside, landside, terminal, dove into each division, loved each of those, found a real passion for the airport operations, and recently within the last year promoted to VP and just trying to make the airport at Nashville better. Airport, someone mentioned earlier, that's where it's at. It's a fun environment to be in. It's a different job every day, and it's just a great place to be.
Great, thank you. And Steve, I didn't say your last name, so
Runge.
yeah.
Runge. It's a hard last name. That's
Thank you. I will say that was intentional because I didn't want to mispronounce it. So same question
No
to
worries
you.
at all. No worries. I caught the aviation bug when I was 15 years old and saw that movie Top Gun. You've probably heard of it, right? And what do you do? You go to Embry-Riddle, right? And I thought I wanted to be a pilot, but similar. It just wasn't really my thing. It was expensive. And as I took courses in School of Business, airports, I kind of fell in love with airports because it's where everything came together, right? So you get to touch everything. And when I graduated 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 92, the aviation market was completely opposite than it is right now. You couldn't get a job to save your life. And so what do you do when you can't get a job? Go get your master's degree, right? So that's what I did from another university in Missouri. And then when I graduated, I got on with Continental Airlines as an agent because it was really kind of before the internet. And I just needed to get my foot in the door to get that experience, right? I had all the degrees, but I didn't have experience. 3 months later of throwing bags and bringing in airplanes, I was in the safety department in Houston with Continental Airlines. And then Osama bin Laden decided to do his thing September 11th. And 2 weeks later, I was laid off from the job that I thought I wanted. And then I just started applying for jobs. And then in 2002, got on at Ellington, which is a very large general aviation airport in Houston. The Houston airport system, by the way, is Intercontinental Airport, Hobby Airport, and Ellington Airport. So I got on as an entry-level ops position there. And progressively moved on over to Hobby, then Intercontinental, and 21 years later, I'm now the deputy director of operations for all of the Houston airport system. So over all the airports, airside, landside, security, SMS, our airport operations centers, and emergency management. I think that's everything. So we'll probably talk about more. Yeah.
Thank you. And what I love is each of your stories are unique. And if we were to ask Lexi from Charlotte or Casey from Cincinnati, they would have a unique tale as well. And it's so awesome that the airports are so eclectic. They'll take, a variety of backgrounds and you can still promote within them. So I love that. I want to shift a little bit. And again, I would encourage the audience and also our a lot of attendees that have joined us online to ask, there we go. Question for Lisa. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the question from the audience, and we'll come back to my question. Lisa, how did Denver's environment prepare you for DFW? Are airport management environments just as different in organization as their layouts?
Yes, they are. There's so many different organization structures in airports. And I guess the way that it most prepared me at Denver was they wanted somebody with winter weather experience, which is I was the snow queen at Denver. It was I worked snow all the time I was there. I ran the snow program. And when we closed in the blizzard, I don't know if you guys remember that, we totally re-engineered our program. So I ended up traveling the world talking about snow plans and everything. So I wasn't looking to leave Denver. It was during COVID. I was eligible to retire the year before, and I decided to keep working because I was going to go do something else, and it wasn't open in COVID. So they reached out to me, and I said, "Oh, sure, I'll just take a swing at it and see what it was." And then I think 9 interviews later, 3 months, and I got the job offer. And it was really because of big airport experience and then the winter weather, because when Texas gets winter weather like it's coming this Sunday, it's like the whole state stops. They panic. They're like probably buying out all the stores today, and it's a big deal. They're just not prepared for it. They don't have the equipment or the people. So I think that's kind of what really kind of helped with that.
Thank you. Would you say that you had this opportunity because you were willing to say yes to some of the things that you had at Denver? Like you said you were known as the snow queen, so you were willing to say yes to that.
Yeah. So after the blizzard, you get decimated in the press. The mayor's ousted usually, and it's nobody wants that responsibility. So they asked for someone. I said, I like snow. I like winter operations, and that's kind of where I kind of got involved in it. And I left the airfield. I was in airfield ops at that time. Went upstairs administratively, worked on that program, worked with city council, all our airline partners, and it really gave me just different experience that I wouldn't have gotten just being on the airfield in an operational role.
Great, thank you. How has your leadership approach evolved over your career in the aviation industry?
Correct. So I was more of a micromanager, and I didn't really trust people. And I think that's kind of human nature, right? As you're learning and growing. And so I had to evolve and start trusting people. And as you move up, you then start building your own teams and training your own teams. And all of us right now, when I accepted this position, I had to have a conversation with my wife, because this is a 24/7, 365 job. This is not go to work for 8 hours and come home. And so I had to build that team of people that I trust, that I know that I can come to Daytona Beach and speak with you, knowing that everything, all the preparations for snow is going to be handled when I get back on Saturday. And so that was probably my biggest transition, is trusting people, building those relationships, and building that pipeline of people that are coming after us, so that we have continue succession in the operation of the airport.
Great, thank you. And we did lose sound for a couple minutes. There were some network issues, so thank you for the attendees online who stuck with us. We didn't lose any, so we're doing good. Adam, can you talk about maybe an experience from your time in the military that's prepared you for your career now?
Yeah. So one good thing about the military is you move around every 2 or 3 years. I think Myers-Briggs says there's 16 different types of personalities. I've met all 16 types 100 different times. So I've seen all styles of leadership. I've seen great leadership, and I've seen really bad leadership. I've learned the most from really bad leadership. You see it. It's almost like nails on a chalkboard, where after a time, I think leadership just comes naturally. As you move up in the executive level, you do have to trust your people. You have to trust your policies, your procedures. And that trust is what builds that confidence in them. And to me, that's what makes a good leader. So you have to communicate. You have to talk to your people. You truly have to care about your people. And if you show that care to them, they're going to care about you and want to do good for you. So leadership, it can be defined a million different ways. My leadership style is not the same as these three up here, or probably you out there. But I think being a true leader, when you see good leadership, you want to emulate that leadership, and that's caring about your people.
Great, thank you. And again, if you have a question, just shoot your hand up. Oh, there we go. See, look at that. Barack, thank you. Good timing.
Can you talk about a day in your life, in your job, and how it's now, how it was like 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago?
I can start. So I think the biggest contrast going back. So a day in the life was focus on going back to leadership conversations, what I did. So I personally had responsibility for me. I did my 8 hours. I did what I was required to do. And I went home. A day today relies on those people. So we talking about leadership. Leadership is actually flipped, right? That person who's doing most of the heavy lifting, they don't really need us to be successful, but we need them to be successful for us to be successful. So it's building a team, empowering a team such that we can have that confidence that the root of the operation is being handled. And it's developing a balance between the tactical versus the strategic. So 20 years ago, it was strictly tactical. This is what I was required to do. Let's take an airfield operations specialist. You're required to do the inspections, your perimeters, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very tactical. As you ascend in the organization, it starts becoming more strategic, where you have to not look at what's directly in front of you, but the impacts that will have 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years from now. So it's more reliant more on the brain and having an outlook that can be for the future versus what I'm doing today.
So I think it's a little different for me. I went to DFW in COVID, and when I got there, there was nobody there. Like none of the administrative, none of the leaders, they were all remote, but all of my staff works 24/7. And so I spent most of the time on the front lines with them, learning their jobs, engaging them, and finding out what their needs were to survive. Part of the reason I left Denver is I didn't like the way that they handled some of the things in COVID and didn't put employees first. City government, a little bit different, where DFW runs as an authority. They care about their people. We took care of our people there, and nobody lost their job. Nobody got a pay cut. And it was about taking care of people. Now that we're mostly back in the office, it's a lot of strategic plans, budgets. But oddly enough, when you're in operations, you'll always have the operational side of it. Right now, we have a ton of construction going on. DFW is 50 years old on Saturday. So there's a lot of construction on the airfield that needs to happen. And sometimes I swear I work on a construction site versus an airport. And I have to say that that's my least favorite part of the job. But I do love anything with people, whether it's your peers, your team, or whatever engagement. Engagement is huge. Development of your team is huge. And I did learn a lot from bosses that I didn't like their style. And you try to be better than them, and when you have a great mentor, a great boss, you remember what they did and emulate it.
I think for Nashville, in 2019, we were a medium hub airport. COVID happened. The slowest day, we had 530 people to the airport. And then after COVID, we were just on a growth, just straight up and down. We became a large hub airport overnight, and our operations team was not prepared at all. And so when I accepted the AVP role back in 2021, I basically doubled the size of the operations team. We had no terminal team. We had 6 ops specialists that were running the airfield and the terminal and land side at night. And so I've more than doubled the team within the last 3 years. And actually just last night, I was getting sentimental sitting at home thinking about the team, and just sent them an email saying, hey, we're going through budget season right now. Look at what we're budgeting for compared to 3 years ago. So it's just looking back those 3 short years, we've grown so much and we're doing so much more.
One of the things I was going to say that came to mind when you asked that question, life happens, right? And we are 24/7, 365. And sometimes when you start in the airport business, you have to work third shift. Third shift may work for your family situation or it may not. When you have kids, sometimes they take the priority. So moving into a supervisory or management position is a choice that you have to kind of make based upon your personal situation. Sometimes people want to become a supervisor just because it pays more money, but they're not cut out. They weren't trained. They don't have the skills to be a supervisor, but they could be a great individual contributor. But then if you promote them, you now have a bad supervisor and you lost a great individual contributor. So as you go through your career, you need to kind of decide and work with your significant other to say, hey, how's this going to work for us in a family? Because we could never do our jobs if we didn't have a good support system. My kids know if my phone goes off, they stop screaming and yelling and let daddy talk on his phone, right? It's just kind of a family thing. So
Yeah, can I add on to that too? So especially for those that are starting out in your career, at some point you make a choice. Do you want to, if you want to move up quicker, it's bumping around airport to airport to airport. Like I stayed a long time. It was a choice I made when I had my 3 children. And I had a great husband support. He knows, like, I always worked the night shift and we would swap our kids in the parking lot. And when I went to DFW, he and my 3 kids, well, 2 of them now are still in Denver, and he's just joining me in April. So 3.5 years I've commuted back and forth. So you make choices, you make sacrifices, but I could not have done that if I didn't have, well, a little bit older kids. They're all in college now, but if I didn't have a spouse that understood and, just wholly supported it.
Thank you. Steve, afterwards, you ought to teach me how to keep my toddler from screaming during meetings. We have a
tell
couple.
them no YouTube.
There you go. We have a couple of questions online. Sandy asked, and since you all, a couple of you mentioned a pandemic, what are you doing to prepare for the next pandemic? Are you working on any contingency plans, or how are you preparing based on what you learned for the next thing?
I think I hope we don't have another pandemic. That's the goal. I think the first one in 2020, it shocked all of us. We had no idea what COVID was. We had no idea how far it was going to go, and we had no clue that it would affect the world the way it did. It was a huge eye opener for the world, and especially us at B&A. We were looking at the cleaning systems, air vent cleaning systems. We're looking at handrail cleaning systems and the all kinds of stuff that was being invented and put out in the world. We've got all kinds of COVID policies, procedures. The EOC has stacks of publications and procedures if something were to happen. So I think looking forward, we're in a much better spot than we were back in 2019 and 2020. I hope we don't have to use them, but I think our teams are prepared to respond if something were to happen.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
The only thing I would say is work from home is kind of a new philosophy at the city of Houston and Houston airport system. It's an airport, right? You got to be at the airport to work. Well, not all employees have to. And one of the challenges in our IT division, for example, if you are a highly skilled IT professional, working from home is almost a given. But in Houston, we don't have that policy in place yet. There's a lot of variables for that, particularly at the airport. So it's related to COVID, but that's one of the challenges that we're currently facing. And when you're trying to hire people and you don't offer that, they go someplace else. So that's one of the challenges we're having.
Yeah, and our CEO at DFW, 73% work 24/7 on the airport for the board employees, and he brought people back full time probably like almost a year and a half ago. And we did have a lot of administrative people, finance people, marketing, HR people that wanted to work remote, and so they did leave, and we have had a lot of turnover, but I feel like you should be there when it's an airport. That's where all of our passengers are. Be there on the front line for sure.
One of the change was a change of philosophy in terms of obviously the airport is driven a lot by passenger traffic, passenger interactions, the concessions, the rental cars, everything is driven by passenger numbers. So when you have a dependency on passengers and there are no passengers, we got some challenges. So strategically thinking, how can we diversify the airport portfolio? Airports have evolved, in my opinion, from more than just an airport where people go to take flights, almost to a business model where, the concessions, the availability of experiences. So it's how do we diversify the airport such that the reliance on the passengers is not enough that would cripple us if we were to have another pandemic.
Did you guys lay people off or not fill positions when they became open during COVID?
we offered a voluntary separation package. Several folks took that, but outside of that, we did lay off, or we did very similar. Salaries remain the same, no pay cuts, et cetera. So it's trying to take care of the employee, understanding the dynamic of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good point. We did the same thing. We had 0 layoffs during the pandemic. We did do a hiring freeze, I think, for a short time, but nobody lost their job at our airport during the pandemic.
Same thing in Houston.
Great, thank you. Fred, I will come back to your question, I promise. But Aiden asks, and he wants all the panelists to weigh in, when changes impact the aviation industry at large, such as carrier changes, aircraft model changes, et cetera, what is the ripple effect of that to your leadership at your airports, if any? So what is the ripple effect of even aviation industry changes or carrier changes, et cetera?
I think we just hit this at our last Core 30 safety group. You know, the airlines go into a room and they say, we're going to get this new aircraft in 2 years, and it's going to weigh 100,000 pounds more. It's going to be 100% more efficient, and we want to land it at every airport in the world. Airports go into a room and they say, we want to build a new runway. Okay, great. The money's going to take 30 years to get there. You're going to have to plan it out for 15 years. And then in 40 years, you're going to have the proper runway for the aircraft that was just built in the next 2 years. And you just, that doesn't align the timelines. And so, I mean, for us, we're trying to plan out what we required to plan out 30 years, but we don't know what the technology is going to be in 30 years. And so I feel like we're constantly trying to chase our tail to make sure that our concrete is the right size concrete, the right weight, we've got the right markings to meet the current demand for aircraft. When they're building aircraft, it's going to be delivered within 3 years that we're not going to meet for 30 years. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges for us.
Thank you.
I think it's when the FAA changes their standards, design standards, and you can have, oh, you need to go out and replace your entire lighting system on the airfield, or now you need to put painted islands or turf islands for the taxiway entrances into the runway, and you're like, we didn't have a problem with that to begin with, right? So, and then you got to apply for the money, put it out to bid. It's a long process, and then you get to the end of it, and they're like, oh, we changed our mind again. And it's a circle of construction and maintenance, really, trying to keep up with the standards.
I see Lexi nodding a lot. Marquez, Steve?
Yeah, I work at a construction site that happens to land airplanes. United literally yesterday just shut down part of Terminal B at Intercontinental because they're going to convert it from an express facility to normal aircraft. And our roadways are very restricted. We can't go left, we can't go right, we can't go up because of our elevated train. So we have to think of creative ways that they can build while we're still operating the airport. Denver, interesting, you mentioned that. Well, what did that open? 30 years ago, 25 years ago or so? Yeah, 28 years ago. The beauty of that was they just built it out in the middle of nowhere and then just closed Stapleton and moved over. That doesn't happen anywhere anymore. We have to build and continue to operate the airports, and that's really one of our biggest challenges is the constraints that construction puts on roadways. And we are in desperate need of more gate capacity at our airports. It's just getting them. That's the challenge.
And when they build Denver, they had all that space, and if you go there now, they're encroaching, and they're actually looking at building, I think, their next runway in a least efficient spot, but to block building so that they'll have that airspace because of the constraints that other airports have. It's really important to have like airspace efficiency programs and looking at a better way that you can be more efficient with what you have. Because you'll have your majority and interest carrier, for us, it's American, and they'll come in like, we're going to have X amount of passengers in 3 years. What are you going to do to be able to handle them? And, we're adding 22 gates, 29 if you count the ones that are going on A and C right now. And by the time we finish those, it won't be enough. You never have enough gates. So we like to push back and say you should be more efficient in your schedule and you should optimize your gates. And we've worked really well with them on trying to get them to, because I don't know if you've ever come in there, you'll land, you'll take off out of A and you'll come back on C, and you have to go completely different, gate. And so they have gotten much better. West airplanes coming from the west will go out back on the west, and east. It's not 100%, but they've made a really good effort at it this last year, and you see it in their numbers. If you saw their holiday numbers, they were remarkable in the holiday season.
Great. We have a lot of questions online, but again, if anybody in the audience has a question, just shoot. Oh, there's one. Shula has a question. Great. And then we'll get to you, Sam and John. And I did not forget about you, Fred.
I know you guys have talked about like experiences or abilities that you guys have had to need to gain as a leader. What would you say are characteristics you guys have had to drop or separate from as a leader, and whether they were hard to drop or whether they were hard to lose, and just your processes with that.
Hair and sleep. Two. Yeah.
So
good question.
great question. So for me, inherently, I'm an introvert. I hate people. I hate them all. But obviously, in an airport environment, your interaction is with people arguably 100% of the time. If it's not passengers, the internal customers, the airlines, it's your team. So it's just adjusting. You're not necessarily changing who you are, but you're just adjusting based on the audience that you're serving. And it's similar to life, in my opinion. For example, when we hang out amongst our friends, we have a different demeanor, different attitude, different language even than if we hang out with our professors or airport professionals or whomever. So it's just the adaptability to understand the situations that you're existing within and just working with those constraints.
Marquez said it really well. And there's a difference between being a manager and a leader, right? A manager just makes widgets, efficiencies, and things. But a leader, I have to force myself to get out of my desk and to go out and engage with my team, either at a luncheon or at a team meeting, or just walk around and say hi and see how they're doing. I have to force myself to do that because the job will just overtake you. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges is time management and prioritizing. You got to take care of your people, right? They never see you, then you're not going to really have that relationship. So I would say that's one of my biggest struggles.
I feel like I'm the opposite. It had to change how the relationship I had with my employees, right? As when you're a coworker and a colleague, and then you move up and then you're supervising them and then you're leading them and manage them. You just have to kind of compartmentalize it, I guess. Outside of work is one thing, at work is a different. But I'm the one that has to be forced to go back to my desk. I love to be outside. I like to be on the runways and the taxiways. That's why I went into aviation. I don't want to sit in and look at my computer all the time. I never work remote. They kept saying, you could work from Denver. I said, no, I want to be here with the team. And for me, that's just, I don't know, it's just, I'm more the outgoing one, I guess.
And he's part of that is pride, to check in your pride. We're very prideful people. So Lisa's my girl. She got me covered. And as my boss, now she's disciplining me. I have to understand that, okay, my pride, I'm not being challenged. It's my output or my work or, my characteristic. So it's just internally managing your emotions.
I think my biggest struggle is I'm a hands-on guy, and my biggest struggle as a leader in my entire career, I always wanted to just reach in and just do it myself. Like I don't have the patience to sit here and watch you. Let me just do it and get it done with and get it out of the way, and I'll teach you later. So my struggle is I will stand behind them and they won't see me, but I'm cringing just watching them trying to get it done, and they'll do it. And sometimes I let them fail on purpose so that they learn. But that is a battle to this day that I still struggle with, where I know what needs to be done. I can just jump in and do it real quick, but they have to learn. And so I'll step back and let them do it.
And sometimes they teach you how to do it better because they're younger. They come from different perspective, different views. And it's interesting how we think we might know it, but sometimes they come in with better ideas, more efficient.
We have a lot of questions, but I think we can answer this one quick. So any of you all can answer this one. And this is kind of a shameless plug as to why you're at Embry-Riddle. So the question is, what are some of the, oh, wow, a bunch of questions just came in at the same time. What are some ways that you collaborate and network with peers and external stakeholders? And I think this is a good opportunity to say why all y'all are here. So whoever wants to take it.
All right, I'll start. So when I got the job at DFW, Adam reached out to me. He was a colleague with the former VP of DFW and just said, hey, I want to meet you. And he said, we kind of have this group in Core 30 airports. And that's kind of the meeting that we're coming here for tomorrow. So it's the Core 30 airports. And we come in and we're supportive of each other. We talk about our issues. If we don't know the answer, somebody on our group does. And then beyond that, it's committees with ACI, AAA, just many different industry partners that, I mean, my best person at American is at DFW, the VP of Ops there. You know, that's who I spend most of my time working with as my partner.
Great, thank you. I would just add that she was referencing Adam Bouchard at Tampa International Airport in the back of the room here. And also, as part of that, many of you know Robert Sumwalt, and he'll be speaking tomorrow to the Core 30 group as well, which is the top 30 airports in the country. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say it's really handy to have this group because we share share many common problems. It's good just to reach out and say, hey, how are you guys handling this, or how are you handling that, so that you can kind of do some peer-to-peer comparisons. It's been very helpful. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and last year we needed Houston to send us some liquid chemical in our ice storm, and trucked it up and helped us out. We won't send equipment usually, but we're there for each other.
You still haven't paid us for that. Yeah.
That's the finance department.
There's so many good questions here. I'm going to ask this one just because I'm curious. Is what are your thoughts on eVTOLs, and what are you budgeting for that, and how are you preparing for those?
I'll start.
I could ask about baggage handling if you would prefer.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So it's a conundrum for us in the airport industry. We acknowledge that eVTOLs are coming, right? They are coming. We don't know when, but they're coming. The challenge is for us to take action, we have to have some type of direction to go in, some type of instruction, some type of FAA guidance, without which it is very difficult for us to plan, because you don't want to invest and plan in infrastructure to realize that you've gone the wrong direction. So I think comfortably I can say that we all anticipate it's coming, unknown when, but it's coming. But we are in this phase of flux. We kind of alluded to it earlier, where the technology is coming, but what the airports can do, we're still in this area of nothingness.
I think we're actually at the planning stage. We're getting ready we've been working with NASA on what the flight will look like, and the patterns in and out. And the biggest thing is power. How are we going to power it? We need more power, more grid power, and Texas, has their own grid. So definitely challenging, but we have 3 spots picked out. We're building landing zones right now. And I think we've signed on with Archer. I think it's Archer. Or they're going to start coming in and out whenever it gets approved. So I think if we wait, because the FAA will be the last to the table, they're coming and we need to be ready for them. So if you build it, they will come. So I think they'll be there soon.
So we're a city of Houston. We're a city department, unlike authorities. So we're going through the process of, do we look at this holistically from the city, or were we just going to focus on our airports and let maybe a quasi-governmental entity or something do the other part of the city? So we're not sure yet, but we are looking at planning for routes and initial conversations with air traffic control. A route potentially from Ellington, where I mentioned, on the south side of the city, up to Intercontinental. We used to have Continental Express fly that. So that seems like a really reasonable eVTOL route, at least to get started for us. So we're on a very initial phases of that. But power is really one of the biggest issues, including for electric vehicles. Electricity is a big challenge.
So I have two similar questions. So I'm going to try to wrap them up in one here. And if I fumble it, just forgive me, please. What advice would you give to somebody just starting out in their career? And then also, what are your thoughts on somebody who maybe has a bunch of military experience, but doesn't have experience working in the civilian side? So Adam, you seem to be the perfect person to answer that, but kind of both those things, somebody with a bunch of experience trying to start out a career or somebody that's just starting out fresh out of school.
I think if you're first starting out trying to get a job, you have to be open-minded and willing to do anything. I think I just said it earlier today where I will hire work ethic and attitude over experience almost always. But if you're coming out of school or coming out of grad school or looking to get into the airport or airline industry, you have to be willing to be open. And, like Marquez, he was applying for every airline at Orlando. That's the attitude that you have to have is, I'm here to work. I'm here to help this airline or help improve this airport. What can I do to improve your airport? So just open-mindedness and work ethic is what I would recommend. Coming out of the military, I thought in my mind I had no skills that would translate into the civilian world. Huge misconception. You have to take a step back, get out of that military mindset and look at what leadership skills you have. Look at how you've led groups, how you've ran budgets. All that applies to the civilian world. It's a 1-for-1. So really look at what you've done. Go hire someone to help you build a resume, talk you through that transition. But we've got really, really great military retired or ex-military employees. And we've got really great grad students or bachelor students that came out of college. So work ethic and attitude.
Do they fit the culture of your airport, right?
Yeah.
I think that's consistent probably with all of us. I will say that I think you need to be looking at all opportunities. I was going to go pro pilot. I ended up going somewhere different, and my path wasn't straight. So you do have to be open-minded to what you have. And sometimes you figure out, like I went and got my environmental degree. I said I was going to go work in the environmental department, and I did for a while, but I went back because I like the dynamics of operations. But you just try different things. I went and did a fellowship with innovation. I'm a black belt in peak performance, and that made me a better leader when I went back to operational and looking at our process improvements. So just be willing to move around, try different jobs. Maybe you didn't want to work in maintenance, but you want to end up in ops. We're all the same. We cross hire all the time. And I love hiring our military service. Our hardest part is getting the HR credentials, to match up. So we really worked hard to equal this much military equals this much regular non-military service. I'm trying to think of the right word, but yeah, 'cause it doesn't always equate. But now that we have, I bring in a lot of military.
And for the just out of grad school or college, at least for me, my philosophy was the three most critical things for future employment: education, experience, network. I realized, in my opinion, too late that the order of importance is actually flipped. The network is arguably, at least to me, the most valuable, almost invaluable element of successful job hiring. So I always encourage folks, especially coming from the college level, starting out the career, to get involved. The internships with different airports or different entities, that helps establish a network. If you can go to different trade association shows and meet with some of the airport professionals and kind of understand and kind of follow up with them, I think that is more valuable. The experience is vastly needed. I don't want to minimize the experience, the education as well, but I think, at least for me, I realized all too late, the networking piece is arguably the most critical component of those three.
And Marquez, how do you build a network?
You got to start by networking. Literally, as dumb as that sounds, it starts by finding that mentor, that person that you can turn to for advice, that person that can help you meet with other professionals. And I think for, at least for me, my idea of a mentor was some older person who was tenured and was in the industry forever and could help me. That's not necessarily the case. A mentor can be anyone who can help you network. So, it's just that link to those other links. And for me, the person that helped me the most is in our group of professionals.
Thank you.
I also think building your brand is important, as important as your network. What do you stand for? What do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? And then stick with that. You have to have your brand. And then for relationships, it's a triad. Like Marquez and I all know each other, but then we call somebody and we connect them. So it's always a triad, and that's how you grow your network. And you can't just, I mean, technology is great now with LinkedIn and Facebook and all that, but you have to nurture those. You have to always answer the call. You keep on text. I have like this little scheduler. I have my pathway, and I just go through certain things. I have a lot of people in Europe that I've connected with over the years, and I'm going to Oslo in April to speak about winter weather, of course. And one guy I met there is now working there. So I reached out and I said, hey, I'm going to be there. So you just never know when you're going to need that contact, and they stay with you, but you do have to nurture them. You can't just make a contact and not do anything and follow up.
Every day is a job interview, right? And you're building your brand. And one of the things we do daily operational calls, and someone new could come on there and just really be very confident and make an impression, be like, hey, who is this person? And then, oh yeah, that's John. He's the new guy. Really? And that's how you start building your brand, and your attitude determines your altitude. And all those things are true. There are many times that people are just, you can tell they don't want to be there. But when it comes time for a promotion, they flip. They're all nice and friendly. Hey, how you? Okay, so which person are you really getting, right? So every day is a job interview, and that's how you build your network, because you build that reputation. So
To that point, you interview for the job before you actually interview for the job. So that goes with the brand.
And as big as the industry is, as far as opportunity, the industry is very small, very small. So everybody knows everybody in our industry.
And that's true, because everybody was hugging right before we came on camera. So I can attest that. We probably have time for one more question, maybe two, but one more. So along the lines of what you all just talked about, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received that has helped you in your career?
So I'll give two, because I really talked about it, was to be true to your brand and build your network. And then the other one is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk.
I think mine was, don't let your passion get in front of your professionalism. There are times that you want to strangle someone. There are times that you want to scream, but you have to maintain composure, and you always have to be professional. So in the heat of battle, in the heat of snow, in the heat of runway closures or taxiway closures, always maintain professionalism. You're selling yourself, like they said, you're interviewing for that job. In the end, you're going to be remembered for maintaining that professionalism.
Yeah, I already said mine. You're interviewing for a job every day, and your reputation follows you. So that's what I think.
And wear good socks.
And wear good socks. That always helps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Marquez.
No problem. And for me, it would be the true mark of your character is not how you respond when you're successful. It's how you respond during failure. So how do you respond during those times?
Great. Thank you. We have a question in the audience. Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, what do you guys have in place to handle emergency aircraft interrupting your normal operations?
What was the first part of that?
I just wanted to know how emergency aircraft interrupt your normal operations, and what you guys do to rectify those situations.
Well, it happens quite a bit. So we have Intercontinental Airport and Hobby Airport. Hobby Airport, has crossing runways, and invariably an airplane will have a flat tire or something will happen right at the crossing of the runway and completely shut the airport down. So the key is coordinate with FAA, NTSB, of course, rescue and the folks, but communicating with the air carriers so that they can start canceling sections. The last time we had an aircraft crash, there was no injuries. It took us 4 hours to get that aircraft out of the intersection and get the airport back open again. Now, at larger airports like Intercontinental, we have complexes. We have 5 runways. We have a north complex, a west complex, and a south complex. Depending on winds, we'll send that emergency aircraft, assuming we know ahead of time it's inbound emergency. We'll send it to one of those complexes, just shut it down, run the other complexes, keep everything moving, and just focus on that one complex just to keep all the aircraft moving. So it's very dynamic. But if you have fatalities, that changes everything. But most of our emergencies are non-fatality. They're precautionary emergency landings. It literally happens every day.
Yeah. Like hydraulic spills, the biggest thing is all comes back to relationships. It's crazy how it is. American had a landing with hydraulic issues. They leaked hydraulic fluid all over the runway. Their lease says they're going to clean it up. Guess what? Most of the time they take forever to come and clean it up. And we want them off the runway. So our maintenance team comes out and cleans it up. But we're asking for favors, right? Hey, I need you to come out here, stop what you're doing and clean this up. So really it's building it with American to know that their facilities team understands their lease, their brand new lease, that they are accountable for it. And if they don't, we're going to back charge them. But it's calling them up because of course they're like, when are you going to open that runway? I'm like, I'm going to open it when you clean up your oil. So, it's a hazardous spill. You gotta clean it up. So always goes back to relationships.
So we plan in Nashville. We try to plan for emergencies. We prepare. We do monthly tabletop exercises. We do our triannual required exercise, a full exercise on the field. If an incident were to occur, we respond. We have highly trained public safety officials. We've got an emergency management department. We've got a state-of-the-art emergency operations center, a brand new joint information center. If something were to happen, you're responding to the incident, but then you want to recover from the incident to get the airport back open to keep operating. So we run the plan, prepare, respond, recover model in Nashville.
Great. So we end up having time for one more. I'm going to ask, let's see, this one, recognizing we have about 6 minutes left. What are the most pressing, or what is the most pressing challenge currently in airport operations?
Human capital. So during COVID, we had the retirements, the Great Resignation, people that don't want to work at an airport, they want to work from their bedroom or their living room on remote work. So experienced institutional knowledge is light at airports. So we're looking to hire new people, but understanding that they don't have that institutional knowledge. They don't have a lifetime of experience. And it really is, it can be a safety issue, right? Because safety is number one in operations and on the airfield. And we're just struggling to get people. I think we all talked about, I know I have 12 positions open right now. And part of it is the whole thing about, I had a whole bunch of pilots building time as my ops officers, and they've all 5 or 6 of them have been called up to go fly, go for your dream and everything. But we need more people. And so they will be better pilots because they know the airport environment and they'll be safer and they'll understand the processes. But in the meantime, we're just churning too fast right now. And it's not just operations, it's the control towers, it's the pilots are new. A lot of errors that we're seeing happen. And it's kind of like that pucker factor. We don't want somebody to get killed or die. But it's getting closer and closer. So safety's got to be number one. So we got to get some experience.
Lisa, just a shameless plug. If somebody heard that and their ears perked up, where can they go to find out about those 12 openings?
DFWairport.com under careers, or hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they'll be putting out our email and everything, our phone numbers here. So we are hiring. We've got a lot of positions open, which is good because we promoted a whole bunch.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you for the 140 some odd people that have joined us both in the audience and online. We really appreciate your time. And then finally, thank you to the College of Aviation for hosting us in this beautiful building. And really, honestly, just a testament to the aviation community. There are a lot of airport executives in the audience that came to support their peers. So that should tell you, if you're starting a career in aviation, that you have quite the network and quite the friend and peer group. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.